I sold all that gaudy junk your dead mother left you. My stepmother Diane stood in the doorway of my childhood bedroom, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. Behind her, my step-siblings Trevor and Bethany were loading the last of my grandmother's antique furniture into a moving truck. The jewelry boxes that had sat on my dresser since I was 8 years old, the ones my mother made me promise to keep safe, were gone. It was supposed to be a quick trip home to Boston. I'd flown in from Seattle for what I thought was a family emergency. Dad had called 3 days ago, his voice tight with stress, saying we needed to talk about Mom's things. I'd assumed he wanted to finally go through her belongings together, maybe find closure 15 years after her death. Instead, I'd walked into an estate sale. "Where is it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Where's Mom's jewelry?" "Sold it to cover your father's medical bills," Diane said, examining her manicured nails. "All those ugly necklaces and brooches. Some vintage shop in Cambridge gave me $3,000 for the lot. Probably overpaid, honestly. Looked like costume jewelry from the 1920s. My stepsister Bethany laughed from the hallway. "Did you see those fake pearls? They were turning yellow. And that tiara thing? Please. Like your mom was royalty or something." I felt my phone buzz in my pocket but ignored it. "You had no right. That jewelry was mine. Mom left it specifically to me in her will." "Your father has power of attorney over the estate," Diane said smoothly. "And he signed off on everything. We needed the money, Sophia. Real life costs real money. Those trinkets weren't doing anyone any good sitting in boxes." Dad agreed to this? I couldn't believe it. My father, who'd loved my mother desperately, who'd kept her memory alive in every corner of this house for a decade after her death. "Your father is sick," Diane said, her voice hardening. "Stage 3 colon cancer. The bills are astronomical. But of course, you wouldn't know that, would you? Too busy with your little tech job in Seattle to visit. Some daughter you are." The guilt hit like a physical blow. "Dad has cancer? Since when? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "We told you 3 months ago," Trevor said, appearing with another box. "You said you'd visit soon. You never did." That wasn't true. They'd told me Dad had some health issues and was running tests. No one had used the word cancer. But arguing seemed pointless now. "Which shop?" I asked quietly. "Where did you sell Mom's jewelry?" "Why? Planning to buy back your fake pearls?" Bethany snorted. "They're gone, Sophia. Deal with it. Some hipster probably already has them on Etsy, selling them as vintage costume jewelry for $50 a piece." My phone buzzed again. Then again. I pulled it out. 7 missed calls from a New York number. A voicemail. 2 texts from the same number. "Always on that phone," Diane muttered. "Just like every other millennial. Can't even have a conversation without checking your precious device." I opened the voicemail, holding up one finger for silence. Diane's eyes narrowed, but I ignored her. "Miss Sophia Volkov, this is James Whitmore from Sotheby's Auction House in New York. We need to speak with you immediately regarding jewelry pieces that recently appeared in a Cambridge estate shop. Please call me back at this number as soon as possible. This is extremely urgent." My hands went cold. I hit redial. "Ms. Volkov?" A cultured British accent answered on the first ring. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 2 hours. This is Sophia. You called about jewelry?" "Yes. I'm the senior appraiser for Sotheby's jewelry department. A colleague was browsing estate shops in Cambridge yesterday and discovered what she believed to be significant pieces. She purchased the entire collection for authentication. Ms. Volkov, I need to ask you something very important. Was your mother Anastasia Volkov, formerly Anastasia Romanova?" The room tilted. "Yes. How did you? And your grandmother was Elena Romanova?" "Yes, but..." "Ms. Volkov, we need you to come to New York immediately. And we need to speak with your father. The jewelry that was sold, those pieces your family believed to be costume jewelry, they're not costume pieces. They're Romanov imperial jewels." Diane had gone very still. Trevor and Bethany had stopped moving boxes. "What did you say?" I asked, though I'd heard perfectly. "The tiara alone is an authenticated piece created by Faberge for Grand Duchess Maria Nikolaevna in 1914. The pearls are natural pearls from the imperial collection, likely smuggled out of Russia during the revolution. The brooches, the necklaces, every single piece has been authenticated as genuine Romanov dynasty jewelry." "That's impossible," I whispered. "I assure you, it's not. We've been conducting emergency analysis all night." The phone slipped from my hand. I caught it at the last second, but not before everyone in the room heard James Whitmore's voice clearly state, $89 million. Diane's face had gone white. "That's not possible. Those were fake. Obviously fake." "Who are you speaking with?" Trevor demanded, grabbing for my phone. I stepped back. "Ms. Volkov?" James's voice continued. "Are you still there? We need to establish provenance immediately. The shop owner is willing to return the pieces for their purchase price of $3,000, but other dealers have already expressed interest. We have perhaps 12 hours before this becomes a legal nightmare involving multiple parties and claims. I'm here, I said, my voice shaking. What do I need to do? First, I need to speak with whoever authorized the sale. There are legal ramifications. Second, I need you to come to New York to establish ownership and provenance. And third, he paused. Ms. Volkov, this is one of the most significant jewelry discoveries in decades. Did you have any idea what your family possessed? No, I said honestly. My grandmother told me they were family heirlooms. She made me promise to keep them safe. But she never said. I never thought. Grandmothers who survived the Russian Revolution often didn't advertise what they'd managed to save, James said gently. For good reason. Ms. Volkov, I need you to put me on speakerphone. I need to speak with your family. I hit the speaker button. You're on speaker. To whom am I speaking? This is Diane Volkov, my stepmother said, her voice carefully controlled. Sophia's stepmother. I authorized the sale of the jewelry to cover medical expenses for my husband. Mrs. Volkov, I'm James Whitmore, senior appraiser at Sotheby's. I need to inform you that you sold jewelry belonging to Ms. Sophia Volkov, jewelry that was specifically bequeathed to her in her mother's will. These pieces are valued at approximately $89 million. The sale was unauthorized and illegal. Diane sat down heavily on my old bed. 89, that's not possible. They were costume pieces. Old, gaudy, worthless. They are not worthless, Mrs. Volkov. They are among the most significant Romanov pieces to surface in the last 50 years. The tiara alone is worth approximately $18 million. The pearl necklace, which your daughter mentioned was turning yellow, is worth $23 million. Those aren't fake pearls turning yellow, that's the natural aging of century-old natural pearls, which actually increases their value. Bethany made a choking sound. Trevor just stared. I want to speak to my husband, Diane said weakly. That would be advisable, James agreed. Because depending on how this is handled, there could be criminal charges for theft and illegal sale of property. Ms. Volkov clearly has documentation that these pieces were bequeathed to her. Where's Dad? I asked, looking around for the first time. Where is he? Hospital, Trevor said quietly. He's at Mass General. Treatment. My phone buzzed with another call. Dad's number. I switched lines. Sophia? Dad's voice was weak, tired. What's this about the jewelry? Sotheby's just called me. They said something about Romanov pieces? I don't understand. Dad, the jewelry Grandma left me, the pieces you let Diane sell, they weren't costume jewelry. They were real. Imperial Russian jewels. Worth $89 million. Silence. Then, what? Mom never told you? Grandma never said? Your grandmother told me they were family pieces. Sentimental value. I thought she meant emotionally valuable, not. He trailed off. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Diane said we needed money for treatment, that the jewelry wasn't worth anything. I just signed. It's okay, Dad, I interrupted, though it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. We'll figure it out. But Dad, I need to know. Did you authorize Diane to sell my inheritance? Another pause. She said you agreed. She said you'd signed papers giving her permission to liquidate assets for my medical care. I never signed anything, I said, looking directly at Diane. Her face had gone from white to red. I was never even told you had cancer until today. Diane? Dad's voice hardened in a way I hadn't heard since I was a child. Did you lie to me? Diane grabbed for the phone. I held it away from her. Mr. Volkov, I said formally, this is Sophia. I'm going to New York to meet with Sotheby's and establish ownership of the jewelry. I'll keep you informed. But Dad, you need to know, Diane sold property that didn't belong to her and wasn't covered under your power of attorney. These pieces were specifically bequeathed to me in Mom's will. They were never part of your estate. James Whitmore's voice came through the speakerphone I'd left active. Mr. Volkov? I can hear you're on another line. I need to establish some facts. Did you have legal authority to sell your late wife's jewelry? No, Dad said heavily. I didn't. I thought I was signing off on some old costume pieces to help pay bills. I never imagined. Sophia, I'm so sorry. Your mother made me promise to keep those pieces safe for you. She said they were your inheritance, your security. And I failed her. You didn't fail her, Dad. You were sick and you trusted the wrong person. Diane stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. No one told me they were valuable. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to sell them at all, I said coldly. They weren't yours to sell. We needed money. Your father is dying. My father has excellent insurance through his retirement plan, I countered. I reviewed his policies last year. His out-of-pocket maximum is $8,000 annually. You didn't need $3,000 for medical bills, Diane. What did you really need it for? Trevor and Bethany exchanged glances. Bethany spoke up reluctantly. Mom's been planning a remodel. New kitchen, new bathrooms. She got quotes last month. Everything clicked into place. You stole my inheritance to renovate your kitchen. It's not stealing if I thought it was worthless. Diane protested. It's theft regardless of the value, James Whitmore interjected smoothly. Mrs. Volkov, I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel. Miss Sophia Volkov, I need you in New York as soon as possible. There's a 4:15 p.m. train from Boston South Station. My assistant will meet you at Penn Station. Bring any documentation you have, your mother's will, your grandmother's papers, anything that establishes provenance. I'll be there, I said. And Ms. Volkov? Congratulations. You're about to become a very wealthy woman. I hung up both phones and looked at Diane. At my step-siblings who'd mocked my mother's treasures. At the house I'd grown up in, now feeling foreign and hostile. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. I'm going to New York. I'm going to establish ownership of Mom's jewelry. And then I'm going to press charges for theft and fraud unless you sign a legal document relinquishing any claim to my mother's estate, pay back the $3,000 you received, and cover all legal expenses. You can't do this, Diane whispered. Your father. My father will be taken care of, I said. By me. With money from the sale of jewelry that was always meant to provide for my future. But you, Diane, you're done. Start packing. Trevor found his voice. You're kicking Mom out? This is Dad's house, I said. He can decide whether she stays. But I'm filing for divorce on his behalf if he's too weak to do it himself. She lied to him, forged his authorization, and stole from his daughter. That's grounds for divorce in any state. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Bethany caught my arm. Sophia, wait. We didn't know. We honestly thought, you thought it was funny, I said, pulling away. You laughed at my mother's treasures. You mocked her memory. Whether they were worth $3,000 or $89 million, they were precious to me. And you treated them like garbage. I walked out of my childhood home for what I suspected might be the last time. My phone was already ringing again, James Whitmore with more instructions, my father calling back, my lawyer, because I was definitely calling a lawyer. But first, I had a train to catch. 3 hours later, I sat in Sotheby's private viewing room on Manhattan's Upper East Side. James Whitmore, distinguished and gray-haired, placed a velvet tray in front of me. On it was my grandmother's tiara, polished and gleaming under professional lighting. Faberge, 1914, he said softly. Created for Grand Duchess Maria Nikolaevna's 16th birthday. It disappeared during the Revolution. We assumed it had been destroyed or lost. Your grandmother must have been extraordinarily brave to get this out of Russia. I touched it gently, remembering playing dress-up as a child, Grandma Elena smiling as she let me wear the costume tiara while I pretended to be a princess. I had been wearing a real imperial tiara. There's more, James said, bringing out another tray. The pearl necklace. Natural pearls, perfectly matched, Persian Gulf origin. Approximately 1910. Worth substantially more than the tiara. One by one, he showed me pieces I'd seen my whole life but never understood. A diamond brooch that had belonged to Empress Alexandra. Emerald earrings commissioned by Grand Duke Constantine. A sapphire ring that Catherine the Great had worn. My grandmother had carried an empire's worth of jewelry out of Russia, hidden it in plain sight for 3 generations, and no one had known. Why didn't she tell anyone? I asked finally. Fear, most likely, James said. Russian émigrés in the early Soviet era had to be extraordinarily careful. If word got out that they possessed imperial treasures, they risked theft, deportation, or worse. Safer to let people think they were costume pieces. She made me promise to keep them safe, I said. I thought she meant emotionally safe. Keep her memory alive. You did keep them safe, James assured me. And now, you have choices to make. We can auction these pieces. Conservative estimate, they'll bring $89 to $95 million. You could loan them to museums. You could keep them. But Ms. Volkov, I need to warn you, once news of this discovery breaks, your life will change dramatically. I thought about Diane, about Trevor and Bethany's mocking laughter, about the estate shop that nearly lost the find of a century. Auction them, I said. Everything except the tiara and the pearls. Those stay with me. The rest can go to people who will appreciate their history. And Mr. Whitmore? I want 10% of the proceeds to go to cancer research. In my mother's name. That's extraordinarily generous. My mother would have wanted it, I said. And my father needs to know that her legacy is taking care of him. The auction 3 months later made international headlines. Lost Romanov treasures surface in Boston estate shop, the Times declared. The $89 million mistake, Forbes called it. Every major news outlet covered the story of how Imperial Russian jewels had hidden in plain sight for a century. Diane's attempt to sue for a share of the proceeds was dismissed immediately. She and my father divorced quietly. She moved to Florida with Trevor and Bethany, none of them speaking to me again. I didn't care. My father's treatment was covered in full by the finest oncologists in Boston. The cancer went into remission 6 months after the auction. He moved to Seattle to be near me, into a beautiful apartment with a view of Puget Sound. On his first night in his new home, I placed Grandma Elena's tiara in a glass case in his living room. "Your mother would be proud," he said, tears in his eyes. "She protected these treasures through revolution, immigration, poverty, and fear. And you protected them too, even when you didn't know what they were." "I kept my promise to Grandma," I said simply. "Keep them safe." That's all she asked. The pearls I kept for myself. I wore them to my father's cancer-free celebration dinner, to charity galas where I donated generously, to business meetings where I invested my auction proceeds in tech startups and medical research. And every time I put them on, I thought of 3 generations of women who'd survived impossible odds, who'd carried an empire's treasures through revolution and rebuilding, who'd hidden wealth in plain sight and trusted that someday, the truth would surface. My stepmother had called them worthless junk. Sotheby's had called them priceless history. I called them exactly what they were: my mother's love, my grandmother's courage, and my family's vindication. And that, I decided, was worth more than any dollar amount could ever measure.